two generations of brothers making music like this, it's very unique.
Coming from a family of deaf parents, and all of a sudden they get some children that, wow, they're musically talented. It's blossomed. It's really special now.
I think it says a lot to who we are, what we've learned, where we want to go, and the legacy we leave behind.
My name is David Ullman, and you just heard the voices of my brother Brian, my dad Jim, and his brother Jack. Together, we are the Ullman Boys, and if you've been following along for the last couple of months, you've heard us going track by track through our first studio recording collection, Family Album, reminiscing about the stories surrounding the song selections, the recording sessions, and inspirations for the project. In this episode, I'll be wrapping up the Family Album saga with an audio presentation of the 7-part blog series collected at davidullman.net/familyalbum, in which you'll learn the backstory of how music became such an integral part of the Ullman Boys family connection over the years. Before I get into that, I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate you listening to this first Dreaming Out Loud podcast series. I have 2 more seasons, or series, I'm not sure what to call them, planned, actually even recorded and mostly edited. Both are self-contained like the Family Album episodes and fall under this larger umbrella of connection through creativity. Those will come out when the time is right, and you never know when another bonus episode like this one might pop up. Please subscribe or follow in whatever podcatcher you're listening on, and share the podcast with anyone you think might be into it. If you want, you can connect with me directly on my website, davidullman.net, and tell me about your passion projects. Thanks again. Until next time, keep dreaming out loud, my friends. Born to deaf parents, my dad and his 3 siblings grew up in a house without music. Seeing the Beatles on The Ed Sullivan Show in 1964 changed all that. Dad and Jack crafted cardboard band instruments and distributed the roles of John, Paul, George, and Ringo among themselves and a couple of other friends, and began playing along to the Fab Four's records as a sort of lip-sync tribute group. Before long, they graduated from cardboard cutouts to actual instruments, and while brothers Dwayne and Greg Ullman were getting together with their pals in Jacksonville, Florida to form the iconic Ullman Brothers Band in the mid to late 60s, Jim and Jack Ullman were recruiting their buddies to become the Bushmen in Rittman, Ohio. They covered the popular songs of the day, beginning with an impromptu performance of Last Kiss by J. Frank Wilson and the Cavaliers at a street corner sock hop. This detail is one of the many surprising parallels in the paths of us 4 Ullman Boys I learned of during the 5-hour-plus interview I conducted with them for this. Because of Pearl Jam's chart-topping cover of Last Kiss more than 3 decades later, I myself sang the same 1960s song in that same town square. You can actually see that moment about 53 minutes into a documentary I made called Steve, Finding Rhythm. And here's what Uncle Jack remembered about the Bushmen's first gig.
Ronnie had his bass, he had gotten his bass, and I didn't have a set of drums at the time. So Gary Croft left his drum kit for me up on the stage. And that was the first night I'd never played a set of drums in my life. And we got up there and we didn't have any songs in particular. We would play whatever was the songs that were going on at the time at these sock hops, and we would try to play, and that's how we did it. We just got up on stage and started playing. I don't know how we survived the night, but it was amazing. It was, we loved it. And we became a mainstay in Rittman because of that.
Throughout their teens, the Bushmen played gigs at city parks, Battle of the Bands competitions, homecoming dances, the local swimming pool, and lunchtime performances in the high school gymnasium. My dad sang lead vocals and played guitar, Uncle Jack the drums, and their pals Ronnie and Larry on bass and lead guitar.
We started really being serious about the music 65, 66, and I looked up some articles where they talked about our band when we created and all that stuff. It looks to me like it was like late 65, 66. Of course, the Beatles hit about 63, 64 when we really latched on. I'd learn the chords, learn the songs, teach it to the guys, and we played those songs. So, 4-year span, 3-year span, and my gosh, we're sitting here today because of those 3 years where we got a guitar and learned the chords and played around with like-minded people. And we ditched the cardboard for the real deal. We wanted to play Four Tops and Temptations, and finally really moved into like Motown, where, the last few times we were playing as a band, we were playing Motown. And then, when I was a senior, 68, we stopped playing because we were so deeply into athletics as well that it kind of drifted away.
Thank you.
The Bushmen disbanded after graduation. Dad went to college at Ashland University on a baseball scholarship and later got his degree from Bible College to become a church pastor. Uncle Jack enlisted in the Air Force, where he also played baseball. When he wasn't playing center field for the Ramstein Rams, Jack was playing protest songs by Country Joe and the Fish, Peter, Paul and Mary, and Joan Baez and the Airmen's Clubs. He was hoping to get together a new group of musicians to play with him in Germany. When that didn't work out, Jack mailed the 12-string guitar he bought there to his brother Jimmy back in the States.
I used it to lead the church in worship. We went from a person who played piano, who played with all her heart, but didn't have any musical skills. But they had nothing else. When he gave me that 12-string guitar, I didn't have any real guitar at the time when I got that. So when I got that 12-string, I put that thing to work. So it began there. And then I got Ovation and joined another church organization which specialized in worship through acoustic guitar. So there'd be about 4 of us with acoustic guitar, and we're playing songs, leading congregations in worship. And I probably did that taught it. I did worship seminars and things probably for 6-7 years.
I came along in 1979, and for as much as music was not a part of Dad and Jack's home life growing up, it dominated mine. One of my most constant memories is Dad playing guitar around the house, and I remember a lot of the worship music he led at church. My dad started teaching me to play guitar when I was 9. Seeing La Bamba and the Buddy Holly story biography films inspired me to want to play those 50s rock and roll tunes. Just like him and his brother with their Beatles records, Dad started me out with a cardboard guitar. Slinging that 2x4-necked rubber band string axe over my shoulder, I'd mimic the mannerisms and performance style of Lou Diamond Phillips' Ritchie Valens. The first one he made me was modeled after his custom blue Fender Strat and can be seen in the back half of a 1988 VHS remake of La Bamba I did. I directed kind of on the fly in front of the camera. And another notable appearance in that Ullman production, as the opening pre-adolescent hand-scroll title card announces, is my 5-year-old brother Brian portraying Bobo, Delphi Records founder and Ritchie Valens producer and manager Bob Keane. Between this and a revised version we attempted a few months later, my little brother Brian would also play Ritchie's older brother Bob and Buddy Holly with great glee and an understandable amount of bewilderment at times as I was feeding him the lines from memory out of the side of my mouth. Brian caught the music bug in middle school. He started by plucking out simple bass lines from things like the Violent Femmes song on the Crow soundtrack, and quickly moved on to fronting a 4-piece rock band of his own and playing the same gymnasium the Bushmen had 30 years prior. In the 2 years chronicled in the Enormity Anthology 1996 through 1998 video collection, you can see the youngest Ullman boy take his basement band from that small stage to capacity crowds at Cleveland's Odeon Concert Club. I was mostly concentrating on making movies at that time. I even attempted to direct a music video for Brian's band. Though I lacked the skill to edit it together back then, I completed it for the Enormity Live at the Odeon Legacy release in 2018.
Stand out like that man of the crowd. Stand out like that man of the crowd.
Though the frequency ebbs and flows, since 1988, music has always been a steadfast outlet for my creative expression. Before filmmaking became my focus in the early 90s, I channeled my passion for 50s rock and roll, sparked by those Columbia Pictures biopics, into a series of cassette albums I recorded using first my dad's Panasonic RQ2739 slimline portable cassette tape recorder, and later my own prized Sony Soundwriter dual cassette radio boombox. The Sony unit made it possible for me to overdub a harmony vocal like I'd learned in the Buddy Holly story, or layer a lead guitar part over a rhythm track. Unfortunately, in a misguided attempt to grow up in middle school, I threw these tapes away. I do remember I used to spell my stage name, David Ullman, with a Y and one L for Ullman, and I would draw cassette covers modeled off either Buddy Holly or Amy Grant tapes. I can also recall Dad doing the lead guitar solo for my version of That'll Be the Day. The only two originals that linger in my memory are Move Over Elvis, sung to the tune of Buddy Holly's It's So Easy, and a Beach Boys ripoff that included the lyric, "If you've ever been to California, then you know what I mean. The girls are cute and the boys are mean." Whenever I got excited about a certain song, I'd ask Dad to teach me the chords, and eventually I got to where I could figure things out on my own. While Brian's group was winning studio time and Battle of the Bands competitions, I was beginning to play a lot of Pearl Jam covers and relishing the outlet of belting out Eddie Vedder's emotional lyrics around the campfire with my friends. At home, Brian would often join me, filling in the spaces by playing the more complicated phrasings he was learning that complemented my open chord strumming and imitative vocals. The year 2000 was a pivotal period for the younger pair of Ullman brothers. Brian was in high school, playing in 2 rock bands, and getting into home recording. In keeping with the fraternal framework laid out by the Bushmen in the 60s, both of Brian's groups had at their cores a pair of brothers on drums and guitar. In Paradigm the Yo-Yo Crusade, which was an evolution of Enormity with a new singer, it was Matt and Mike Socrates, and in Circle of Willis, the new band for which Brian was writing and singing, Zach and Cody Kelly. I was unwittingly breaking this tradition by being in a band in which no one was related, a folk pop didgeridoo quintet called Steve. The Steve saga is recounted in great detail on my website, as well as in the documentary Steve Finding Rhythm that you can find linked on the site. But Steve is relevant to the Ullman Boys backstory in that Brian produced our album In the Event of Rhythm, which was the 3rd CD he had a hand in creating that year. In the clip you can see in the accompanying article at davidullman.net/family album, you can see a 17-year-old Brian talking about how he came to be involved in the recording, as well as watch him surprise our friend Jackson with an Ebo guitar approach to achieving the cello-like sound he was craving for the song. Brian was no longer pretending to be a record producer, repeating cut, try it again for our home video La Bamba remakes. Though he had yet to graduate high school, Brian had already spent time in multiple professional recording situations with his bands and was developing a remarkable ear and musical acumen as both a player and audio engineer. Unfortunately, the tumultuous transition from teenagers to 20-somethings that had brought an end to the Bushmen decades before also delivered a series of challenging disappointments to me and Brian as well. By the age of 20, Brian's bands had all broken up and he had returned home to Rittman after a short-lived stint at Ashland University, the same school our dad attended until on April 6, 1970, when as a starting shortstop covering second base, a runner slid into his leg wearing metal cleats, all but ending his promising baseball career. To hear him tell it, Dad limped around and still managed to play for Malone University in Canton a couple years later, but it was never the same. By the end of 2003, I was 6 months married and poised to major in film studies at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. I had been living in Raleigh, North Carolina with my fiancé for a few years, working at both a gas station convenience store and UPS, all the while making notes for new songs, when in a shocking and heartbreaking turn of events, the life I was building there quickly fell apart, and I soon found myself limping back to Rittman to live in the family basement. During this difficult time, both Brian and I immersed ourselves in music. Brian began pouring his creative energies into a recording project called 4 Degrees North and running live sound for the Voodoo nightclub in Akron. I decided to process my divorce by making a record also. When I had gotten hitched, Dad cashed in an old life insurance policy he had taken out in my name through his job, and he gave it to me when I moved back home to regroup. He and I took the lump sum payout to the Guitar Center in Fairlawn, bought a Hawaiian Koa Wood Martin DXK2 Dreadnought full-bodied acoustic guitar, and a Lexicon Omega digital recording workstation. I ordered an ADK A51 SC1 Studio twin microphone set online, cleaned out the basement, hunkered down, and began writing and recording the songs that would become my debut album, Dog Days. Brian and I ended up co-producing that record over a 3-year period, during which I strengthened my voice and the songs by performing in area cafes and clubs as a solo act, and Brian sharpened his ears at the recording workshop in Southern Ohio. I call it my audio boot camp, he says, since it was 12-hour days and I lived in a tiny cabin in the woods with 4 other dudes. When we celebrated the release of Dog Days in February 2008 at Akron's Musica Concert Club, Brian both played guitar in my Sad Bastard band and performed a set of his own as the Fascist Puppeteer. These were the days of MySpace, and Brian had been posting music under this cheeky one-man band production pseudonym that people seem to love, especially his rap song parody, Shit Son.
Shit, son, I'm the one to break you off some. Hit number 1, you know it just for fun. I bang the beats on the street, got my fellas singing with me, you don't know me. You don't know my shit.
The CD release concert was surprisingly well attended. Brian hadn't played a live show in ages, and his stealthy draw combined with the audience I'd been building over the 130 plus gigs I played in the area over the previous couple of years, plus some relentless promotion aided by a friend who was working in public relations at the time, led to a crowded event that paved the way for us to continue putting together our own concert bills at that club for years to come. Uncle Jack lost his wife Debbie to cancer in April of 2008. And he too turned to music for solace, strength, and community. Jack got back behind the drums and began sitting in on jam sessions with other Rittman area musicians his age, including his old Bushman buddies Ronnie and Larry. When putting together the lineup for my next CD release show, I seized on the opportunity to reunite the Bushmen as an opening act and do a few songs in my set with an all-Ullman band. This clip from a radio interview I did at the time to promote the gig captures just some of the excitement I was feeling.
David Ullman is with us tonight, and David, from what I've been led to believe, your show coming up at Musica, which is going to be a week from tomorrow evening, is going to be somewhat of a family affair.
Very much so, yeah.
And it sounds kind of scary.
It could be. I think it's going to be fun.
I got that email from you yesterday. Yeah. So tell us about what's going to be happening.
Well, I often play with my younger brother Brian, who produces a lot of the recordings. And he's a talented singer and songwriter and a terrific guitarist. And so he often will play a set, but new this year was adding my dad's high school band, the Bushmen, who are going to play in public for the first time in 40 years.
The Bushmen, man, it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. But they're going to open up. And then you and your brother are going to play a little bit. And is your brother in your band or no?
He's in, whenever I have a band, he's in it. And then on this evening, it's going to be him on lead guitar, playing all the parts that he came up with. Then my Uncle Jack on drums and my dad on bass for an all-Ullman set.
All Ullman all the time.
Yeah.
It was a special evening for us. Wearing a Beatles ball cap, my dad led the Bushmen in a rockin' set of songs from the likes of the Rivieras, Eddie Cochran, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Eric Clapton, and of course, the Beatles, ending in a rousing rendition of Wipeout with Jack drawing uproarious applause. Watching the OG Ullman brothers step into their on-stage roles for the first time in my life was transcendent. Dad was squaring off with Larry for guitar dueling stage shuffles, making middle-aged musician jokes, and peppering the set list with tales of their group origins and poignant tributes to those who couldn't be in attendance. At the end of my set, Jack got back behind the drums, Dad threw on a bass guitar, and Brian joined in on lead for a couple of my originals before closing the mini all-Ullman band set with a crowd-pleasing cover of Neil Diamond's Sweet Caroline. We followed up this reunion show with a couple of other area appearances, including one hometown tavern gig in Ripon that was so well attended that the bar actually ran out of beer. In 2011, during the crowdfunding campaign to release my Light the Dark album on vinyl, we brought the Evening with the Ullmans show back to the Musica stage, twice. For the first outing, I joined Brian on bass for his set, and we closed out mine with an all-Ullman band rendition of the Clear Lake medley from the Buddy Holly story, with all of us wearing matching Buddy Holly glasses. This was a real full circle moment for me, as these were the first songs Dad helped me learn as a kid, and instead of him taking the lead on That'll Be the Day, it was Brian. Every iteration of these family affairs upped the ante a little. In the outro for the Buddy Holly medley, I threw in a few phrases of U2's Desire that fit the same Bo Diddley beat of Not Fade Away. This planted the seed for a 4-song U2 set we'd harvest at the second show later that fall. During that show, as was becoming customary, I invited members of my family to join me toward the end of my stage time. We started by playing an all-ukulele version of Deja Vu, perhaps my best-known song, and one I like to change up a little each time I perform it by singing the lyrics of different pop songs over the end that fit the same melody as the guitar chords. Everything from Joy Division's Love Will Tear Us Apart and Ani DiFranco's Both Hands to Journey's Don't Stop Believin' and even Michael Jackson's Beat It fit the framework. As I began singing the words to With or Without You, the other Ullman Boys came out of the audience and took to their instruments alongside me to finish out the song. From there, we transitioned to a full-on U2 cover band playing Where the Streets Have No Name, New Year's Day, and Vertigo. We also amped up the reunion factor for that show by resuscitating Brian's middle school band Enormity for the night. For their first set in over 13 years, Brian, Nate, Mike, and Matt rocked a medley of their original songs, as well as some Muse, Tonic, Foo Fighters, and they brought the house down just as they used to in the 90s with Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train. I moved to Minnesota 8 months later, and when it came time to tour for Light the Dark, we brought the reunion bands back together for the Ohio stop. This time we got the house engineer Jim Bethel to record a feed from the soundboard and ultimately released a condensed version of all 3 sets, the Bushmen, my solo stuff, and Enormity, as an Evening with the Ullmans, live at Musica. It was a night full of many memorable collaborations. The Bushmen played with their original bassist, Ronnie Osborne, which was a first for these reunion gigs. I'm extra glad to have captured that, as well as Dad's energized, John Fogerty-infused vocal performance of CCR's Green River. And Uncle Jack surprised me by singing lead on a few songs from behind his drum kit. I didn't realize he'd been doing that. And though my living some 760 miles away precluded the requisite rehearsal time necessary for an all-Ullman set, Brian and I joined the Bushmen for their last song, an encore of our Where the Streets Have No Name cover, with Larry Griffin spicing things up on pedal steel guitar. Brian helped me out with a couple of songs during my set, and I was also joined by my friends Zach and cellist Tara Hanisch to play our respective duets from the Light the Dark album. Enormity brought the rock and the roll with kick-ass selections by the Foo Fighters, Tool, Big Wreck, Black Country Communion, and Pearl Jam's Even Flow, with yours truly on vocals.
David Ullman. Check him out.
I debuted a new song that night called French New Year, which led to a collaboration with Brian called The Furious Light. To say Brian produced that album is an understatement. He played almost all of the instruments and built up the robust full band sound I'd always wanted. In August of 2015, we teamed up with our friends Midland Uprising for a short run of rock shows in New York City, Chicago, Akron, and St. Paul.
Burn our cards on the French New Year. Set fire to our past and never let fear. All we got is blood and time, it's all disappeared. But I'll be by your side when the smoke has
Other than contributing music to 2 family weddings and a funeral, I haven't played or sang much music since that Furious Light tour, though I did do a few quarantine performances from home in 2020. Brian worked on 3 records that came out in 2015 and kept busy with mixing and mastering work in the years leading up to Family Album, most of which can be heard on our Dreaming Out Loud Records website. He also lent his audio engineering expertise to and regularly appeared on the Long Walk Short Drink podcast I co-created in 2016. Around this time, Dad and Uncle Jack had been getting together on Wednesday nights for weekly jam sessions with a rotating crew of Rittman area musicians. This routine inspired what would ultimately become Jack's Friends and Family album, a project recorded, mixed, and mastered by his nephew Brian. Midway through that production, Brian went into the hospital with heart failure. Here's him talking about it on episode 50 of Long Walk Short Drink.
Turns out I really fucked myself up pretty bad. Just, it's easy for me to drink 6 beers, and it was easy for me to drink more. I just what I did, part of habit and just what I did. But they say the combination of those 2 things, it took my heart. I'm still in heart failure.
Wow.
So like
oh my God.
And they basically said, if you keep drinking, you're going to die.
Wow.
So, when they give you an ultimatum like that, it's, I think it's kind of easier to make that choice because it's not much of a choice.
Right.
So, yeah, I all in all, I spent a week in the hospital, or 6 days, but felt like a week.
Man, that's a week, buddy.
Yeah.
In addition to working on the Friends and Family project, Brian was also helping me with a 10th anniversary remixed and expanded edition of our Dog Days record. These unfinished projects weighed on him while also contributing to a mounting sense of purpose.
Well, when I was sitting in the hospital and your Dog Days album was not mixed and Jack's album was not done, and those were things hanging over, and I had never published any music, and those were things I was thinking about in the hospital bed at dark hours. Like, I haven't done this, I haven't done that, done this. I'm gonna fucking die.
Although he had been writing, performing, and recording both professional studios as well as in his ever-improving home setup for some 20 years, Brian's original music had never been commercially available, at least not beyond a couple of Circle Wills tracks appearing on limited edition compilations sold in Akron area Best Buys.
There's definitely a time where I took a break from music, and I don't know, maybe a song a year, and that was a trend for a long time, but definitely once it was threatened to be taken away from me, then I got really serious about it.
In 2019, Dreamin' Out Loud Records released not 1 but 2 collections of Brian's music on all the digital platforms under his Fascist Puppeteer moniker. Find Mixtape and Practicing Synthesis wherever you get your music. Our dad also struggled mightily with his health in the decades leading up to the recording of Family Album. He survived 2 heart attacks and the quadruple bypass operations that went with them, a stroke, and 5 neck surgeries, the last of which left him with a paralyzed vocal cord. This made it difficult to breathe comfortably without coughing and definitely made singing a challenge. Seeing his brother struggling at the Wednesday night jams and his nephew fighting to regain his physical and spiritual strength, Jack took decisive action. just as he had in the 1970s when he mailed that 12-string guitar he'd bought in Germany to his then guitarless brother Jimmy back home.
We went and played music at a guy's venue. We was out there playing music, and one of the guys rudely took my guitar, away from me to play music, and then I said, well, I'll just be your compliment. I'll play the drums while you're doing your thing. I was trying to be the nice guy. And the guy says, no, I don't need your damn help. I decided right then, okay, this guy needs to help. Brian needs more help than anybody in this room. So I said, I packed up that drum kit. I drove it straight over here, and Brian, you have a drum kit. You have the start of your studio.
And the Martin guitar. He's like, I'm giving you this Martin guitar, and I'm giving you this drum set. And I just tore down my queen size bed. So I gained this, space in my room, and I'm like, and I had a different layout for my room going on. And then it was like, whoa, I guess things are changing. I guess there's a 9-piece drum set coming to the house.
Yeah.
But just as he gave the Framus to Dad, he did the same gift to me in his Martin guitar and his drums and his microphones, and allowed us to start making these full band recordings. Yeah, it's just amazing how it's all come around as like individual gifts to each other through different circles of time. That's amazing.
The first time this guitar gifting motif occurred was back in the 1960s when Jack and Dad's Uncle Scotty Milam left a harmony guitar at the Ullman House on Wayne Street in Rittman. It was then, before that guitar was ultimately repossessed, that Dad began learning to play. This is him talking about his mom's side of the family, the Milams, during the Great Depression.
They lived in such unbelievable poverty that the house didn't even have a floor. It was a dirt floor. My grandpa was a railroad engineer. He worked on the railroad, but they didn't have any money. What we are understanding now as we look back, what they did have was country music.
The Milams had the music, and ours is genuine. It's down to the soul.
Family Album is a testament to that legacy, and thanks to the ongoing intergenerational exchange of musical inspiration from brother to brother, the Ullman Boys have persevered. By the time the record was finished, Uncle Jack would himself suffer a heart attack and spend time in the hospital. And of course, we would all be waylaid by the seismic impact of a global pandemic and an intensifying period of social upheaval. Through the carefully selected cover songs, and later with the addition of my tune, How Loved You Are, and Dad and Brian's Dream Lullaby, the Ullman Boys are singing and playing their way through loss, heartbreak, health crises, life lessons learned and relearned.
I can't think of another group of brothers of different generations have made a collection of music. They're in their 70s, approaching 70s, and we're in our 40s, approaching 40s, whatever. It's in these tremendously hard times against humanity and hope and these type of things. Like, I just can't believe we're doing it, and it's a tremendous victory for. I would consider it for hope.
It tells a little story. It's just, it means a lot to me.
I see genuine growth, especially letting it be your project and Brian's project instead of being a cover band. You guys are actually putting your artistic strokes on it, and I really appreciate that. I realize now, that Jack and I have been pretty fortunate to live a good life. We've done a lot. And this is just a reminder to me, of when I look at you guys and say, man, I did have a part in that. And I'm proud of the fact that you guys have carried it on, and a lot more people are going to enjoy what Jack and I have planted. That's quite a legacy.
And the legacy will continue. When I spoke to Dad, Jack, and Brian for this, they were already psyched about the work they've been doing for album number 3.
The new stuff that's coming out on the next album is so good. I'm shocked.
But we plan on doing harder songs.
Oh, yeah. So do you.
You just didn't know yet.
Yeah, you don't know.
This has been a Dreamin' Out Loud Records and Hair on the Bear production. It was produced and edited by me, David Ullman. I recorded myself here in Minnesota, and my brother Brian recorded himself, Jim, and Jack in Ohio, both for the interview and, of course, all the music as well. And speaking of the music, you can find Family Album by the Ullman Boys on Apple, iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, YouTube, and of course, for free at dreamingoutloudrecords.com. For more of the story, including photos, videos, countless links to the related projects mentioned, and the collected 7-part blog series recounting the family music history leading up to this moment, head over to davidullman.net/familyalbum. Thank you to my brother, my uncle, and my dad for sharing their time and memories with me, and thank you to you for taking an interest in us.